Thank you for downloading Season 5, Episode 15 of Baseball Pitching the Fix and our special series, Engineering the Pitcher for the off-season. And I am your host, Joe Jenish. With me, as always, is baseball pitching motion expert Angel Borrelli. And Angel, how are we doing today in this early November?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today, Joe?
I am fantastic. And we have two great topics today. We're going to be coaching the coaches. We'll be continuing on the topic of off-season throwing, and in our All It Takes Is All You've Got section, we will be talking about the next series of priority training exercises that you will be giving to the coaches. I think that we should just get started with coaching the coaches. Angel, what do we have today?
Yes, so on coaching the coaches, I want to talk about the continuation of what we started discussing last week with the throwing program, where I was instructing, so many fathers had called in and they were asking about, how to do a throwing program, should they throw. So we talked about all of that last time. And I talked about getting the calendar out and establishing a calendar and establishing the throwing. And I talked about a 2-week flat ground program. And then I talked about doing the interval pitching where you actually start them out at 2025. And so you're hoping to be ready by February 1st. So when they all go into practice, their arm is already conditioned. So I got an interesting email from one of our fathers and also a coach. And he asked me a question that got me thinking. He said, hey, would this still apply? My son, even though he's a coach, he says his son is actually a catcher. And he said, what would I do with him? And of course, my response, when anybody ever asks me about any other position, I always say the same thing. I try to stay in my lane with what I know. But of course, I have some sense of things. So, I told him that. But then I said, but let me say what would be the same. What's the same is that you've got to do the reverse engineering. You've got to figure out the time frame. And I said, but instead of him starting with 45 feet, going to 60 feet, and then starting pitching, he has to keep going because a catcher has to be able to throw, to second base, third base, whatever base he's going to. So he's got a max of 126 feet. So he's got to continue on flat ground. So I said, you would just, lay it out. And I was thinking to myself, he's raising an interesting topic. I said, first of all, if pitchers have another position they play, which they often do in high school and in grade school, might a father or a coach be confused about that throwing program? Then I thought to myself, and oh, wow, how many pitchers we know that as part of their usual practices, they do quote unquote long toss. So they're going to go out and they do this in season. They might throw, some are more conservative these days. They go 150. They call it conservative. Some go 180. Some go as far out as they possibly can. We know there's tons of programs that, put this out there as the magic for having a great arm. And so I said, you know what? I better clarify some things and actually give you some food for thought about making these decisions about the distance you're going to have pitchers throw. So just to clarify what I was talking about, because last week I talked about it's going to take 10, 12, 16 weeks to go from the pitching and get your pitcher to 79. Well, that is with me preceding the pitching program with 45 feet for 5 to 6 times and 60 feet from 5 to 6 times. And they're going from 50 to 75 throws each time. I mean, they're progressing from 50 throws at 45 X number of times to 75 throws at 45 X number of times. And then the same thing happens at 60 feet. Then I get them on the mound. So the number of weeks I was talking about was when you're really only spending 2 or 3 weeks flat ground because you're not going beyond 60. Now, for those of you out there that have pitchers, or let's say you are a proponent of long toss, you might say, well, I want my pitchers to go out to 175 feet before they start pitching. So I want to address why I would never do that, regardless of how I felt about long distance throwing. Now, I know we've had shows on this before, and this show isn't to dispute or try to change your minds about long distance throwing anything beyond what a pitcher needs, especially when you've got a pitcher who has another position. And hopefully we don't have pitchers in the outfield, but I know we do. and they would need that longer distance. But I want to isolate what my thinking is on why you should still stick to what would be a strict pitching off-season returning to play throwing program, which is what, of course, I do. Now, remember, pitchers come to me to re-enter into pitching. They either have an injury, they're trying to improve performance, or they're just under my wing and I'm controlling everything they do in the off season. And I have to get them ready for their coaches. So when I have to make the decisions about what they're going to do and how they're going to use that time, I do not have 1 minute to waste on something that isn't going to directly give me the results that I need to produce. So since a pitcher has to be awesome at 60 feet, 6 inches, when they come to me, I do not waste time putting them on something that is not going to directly enhance that 60 feet, 6 inches in terms of the precision required that the pitcher has to get back into when he returns to pitching. For example, there's tons of research that has been done. We all know when you go beyond 60 feet, you're going to have changes in forces. Okay, so I'm dealing with a guy who's been off season. Do I want to start duplicating tons of forces at a distance where, let's say he gets hurt at 90 feet? Well, I'm going to kick myself because he didn't need to be at 90 feet. And you don't really know the condition. So let's keep the conditioning perfect for what they have to do. Secondly, pitching is a precision skill. And one of the most recent findings that they're getting from research, and it's research that is published in the best of journals, but it is research that includes other positions, not just pitchers. So I have to wean through the information to glean what is important. But here's what is they're finding. Yes, we know the arm goes faster when you go further. I'm sure that's why pitchers love it. But the release points are inconsistent. They're constantly changing. They change, and then at some point they start to adapt. And they can't tell if they're adapting their release point because they figured out how to get some control after they, felt that they were out of control. But the release points change as the distance increases. Now, what you want to do is you want to think about what are we doing in this off season that is leading up to the day they have to go to their coaches and hopefully be so dialed that that coach doesn't have to do too much work with them. And he can be about strategy, getting back on the team, etc. We don't want to do things that are not going to feed the precision that is required for pitching. And by the way, this is the way my brain thinks when they come to me even in season. They're paying me to be better as pitchers. You can believe I'm not going to use any tool or anything that doesn't directly affect everything they need to do, which is increase the velocity and never, ever lose their capability of throwing strikes. And a lot of players that come to me that have trouble, they've got velocity, but they're somehow not making it happen. Most of them engage in practices that actually can cause this kind of inconsistency. And inconsistency comes from inconsistent release points. So now that I already knew it kind of intuitively, but now reading research and seeing this, I'm like, you know what? This is why during this time, you would want to lay aside some of those things you may love and you may want to do so you can get the pitcher back specifically to pitching. Does that make sense what I'm saying, Joe?
Yeah, it definitely does. Absolutely.
Yeah, and when you're seeing guys throw long toss and they're changing their distances, can you tell that their mechanics and their release points are changing? Well, first of all, doesn't it just make sense? If you're throwing up and over, you're throwing up and over to get the ball there, then you're trying to bring it down, and then you're moving around. Can you see how the release point would be extremely sensitive?
I see it all the time, and that's the one thing that's why I always discourage pitchers from long tossing, because their mechanics change, the arc changes, everything changes, and that doesn't help anything.
Yeah, so listen everybody, again, if this is something you love, you know how we love certain things, but it may not be the time to love those things. We may want to lay something aside for a while because we're trying to accomplish something else. When you're returning a pitcher to pitching from being off, you want to directly think about the pitching skill itself. And you'd want to not distract from that reconditioning and development. So, my suggestion is, and this is the same suggestion for you high school coaches that are saying, well, what if my guy's an outfielder? Listen, once you get a pitcher pitching, and this is what I tell them when they come to me and I have to make adjustments, when you are pitching consistently and we have everything dialed, then you can go ahead and add your bells and whistles as long as it doesn't cost you anything, or resume something that you think's important for you that I'm not going to sign off on, but you get to do what you want in your own personal life. And if you start to see that, you're having trouble, well, then that'll give you information. But in other words, those sorts of things can be laid aside. And if a pitcher follows an exact throwing program that starts with the 2 weeks, no further than 60, he ends up at 79 somewhere around February 1st. On February 1st, if he, which is practices, he wants to start playing catch with his team and then going further out, that's when he would get the extra distance from the throwing program at the practice, because now we're not talking about a precision skill he's got to learn. I mean, when you're throwing from the outfield to the infield, you've got a moving target. You've got a guy who's moving to catch the ball you're throwing. Obviously, you want to throw it correctly, but it's not the same thing. So what I feel is that it is very important to be precision specific during this time of the year, and so that you want to lay aside the idea of bringing in other techniques at this point. In other words, have him be perfect for what he's supposed to do, and then let him bring in some other things that are possibly, something he wants to do as a practice. Remember, during this time, you should be working on, when every pitcher starts his throwing program, you as a coach should have some mental file or some written file saying, okay, this kid last year, his stride was all over the place. Okay, this kid last year, his velocity was off, his location was off. You should have some sense of what pitches were bad, what pitches were good, where his mechanics were at. And from moment one at 45 feet, that's when you want to start to work on everything. If you start to work on everything you want to see that pitcher do, and you do that at 45 and 60 feet, when he gets on the mound, and you've got about 3 weeks, where you're going to be at that. And by the way, you can extend that as long as you want. But the more you get done flat ground with regards to mechanical changes you want to make with the pitcher, the more open his brain is to accepting it, because one, he's not on the mound, so it doesn't bring out the crazy alien monster that seems to take over the minute a pitcher thinks he's quote unquote pitching. But you've got the time to work with him, and where he is more open and his body's more open because it doesn't feel like pitching. In other words, it's not quite pitching, but it's close enough to where his brain isn't rebutting or resisting change. And that's how I think you want to approach your throwing programs this year, so that the precision of the skill is respected and that you work on that precision from moment one, and you don't do anything that would mess with that part of the skill. And I think all too frequently people forget that pitching is a precision skill. They have a very small range in which that ball can be located for it to be effective, and they have to repeat their mechanics in order to be able to do that, and then allow the pitch type itself to create the dance around the plate. So that's my suggestion, and it's food for thought, and I would love to see all the coaches out there maybe taking a different kind of creative approach to how to have precision be the objective for this next season.
Yeah, Angel, I agree with you. Look, velocity is awesome and everybody wants velocity, but doesn't matter how much velocity you have if you can't get the ball in the strike zone and you can't put the ball where you want it to go, it's really not going to be helpful. So all the more reason to make sure that not only you have the consistent mechanics, but the consistent release point that you're talking about. And, I'm thinking about this in regard to the pitchers who also play other positions. If they're going through their throwing program for pitching, I would think that they wouldn't necessarily have to do any other throwing for their other position, even if it's the outfield, because by the time they get into their spring training, their arm's going to be in shape, it's going to be ready, and if they're athletic enough to be a pitcher and throw 80 to 85 miles an hour or more, then they'll probably be athletic enough to throw the ball from the outfield, the 150 or 200 feet that they need to throw it every once in a while. I mean, I wouldn't worry too much about it.
That's exactly what I was saying. They'll be able to do it. If your kid's only an outfielder, well, then he's going to spend the next 12 weeks, becoming a better outfielder. But a pitcher, if that's what he does, it requires that kind of respect because it is such a precision skill that I think we forget because it is one of the few sports where it doesn't seem to be how sloppy you look. It doesn't seem to be important if you look real sloppy. I mean, when you watch runners running, you're going to see pretty much the same style. When you see football players at the combine and they're running 40s, you're going to see pretty much the same style. You're not going to see a lot of funkiness. Funkiness is more accepted in baseball pitching than pretty much all sports. You don't even see that kind of funkiness or rare a variation when you see a tennis serve or even a seasoned golfer. And by the way, I want to tell this quick thing because if you're not believing what I'm saying, I want to bring something in from the golf world. I know tons of you guys out there golf and pitchers love to golf. And I want to say this one thing. So years ago, because I used to work with scratch golfers before I specialized with pitchers, so I had really good golfers coming to me, and I had somebody referred to me who was a competitor in what's called, I think it's called long drive. And what these guys do is they don't play golf. They don't play 18 holes. They go out and they take their driver and they try to hit the ball as far as they can. That's the goal. That's how they compete, and that's all that they do. Well, when this guy was referred to me, I didn't even know about this. So I was he came to me for some advice on something and I helped him. So I went to my good golfers. Now, these guys are scratch golfers. One was a professional on the tour. And in fact, I just had this conversation with a golfer last night who is third in California. He's really, really good. And I wanted to confirm that he said this to me. So I said to him and other golfers, hey, I worked with this guy and well, how come you don't go to the tee? And when you're at the driving range, how come you don't try to hit the ball as far as you can, as that being the goal? Because obviously they all want to get more distance on their ball so they get closer to the hole. So I said, so how come you don't do that? Every one of them, when I asked them, this was years ago, you should have seen the look on their face. They went, what? No way. And I said, why? And they said, oh no, it would ruin my swing. It would ruin my feel. And they went on and it was as if it was terrorizing just to talk about it. The thought of it upset them. So I called this golfer last night and I said, Scott, did you say this to me about that? He said, no way no golfer who's in his right mind would ever do that. And he started discussing it and we had the same discussion. Feel, loss of precision, loss of the swing. They work to retain that. And golfers are obsessive about trying to get the feel and trying to return to the feel that they know. Like if they shoot a good round, they want to be sure they can repeat that. And it causes them to lose sleep because they're almost like they don't know how they did it. To take this, they see it as a completely different skill. And I said, what's interesting to me is a pitcher has to do something. He's got to be as precise out of his hand as a golfer has to be with the ball on the tee. But guess what? The golfer, he gets a wide range of where that ball can land. The pitcher does not. So I said, why don't pitchers worry about ruining their skill as a golfer would the way they do about ruining their skill. Isn't that an interesting thing? I mean, I learned a lot just by asking the golfers that question. I had no idea.
Yeah, that's an interesting comparison. I think that pitchers just don't think about it that way. I think they just doesn't enter their mind, but makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I don't think they do. Yeah, and I think once they start having trouble, they start to think more about it. But anyway, and again, we also know that once you are pitching and you're not having success, whether it's location or whatever, you start to do what's called over pitching, and you start using your arm in a funny way, and the arm's sensitive, and then you end up on the surgical table. So anyway, so there's my food for thought for this month on my Coaching the Coacher segment. And if any of you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. But I would like everyone to think and rethink this whole idea. And maybe if we can save some more arms by saying, hey, let's pay attention to the skill and the precision of it instead of getting too wild. If you want to get wild, don't get wild out of the gate. Wait until February. Let's get them settled in right now so that they have their best chance of being efficient with their arm by the time the season rolls around.
Makes a lot of sense to me.
Awesome. Well, if it makes sense to you, I'm happy.
Well, I'm just one of many listeners here, so.
Okie dokie.
Let's move on to the next segment. All it takes is all you got. And Angel, what's the next series of priority training that we need to do?
Well, I want to remind everybody that last time we talked about priority training the rear deltoid. And if you've had any of your guys doing it, and I've been getting great responses from coaches, and I had a lot of pitchers that decided to do it that I work with. I was telling them about the podcast. And of course, they're training all the time and training intensely. But anyway, so I've gotten great feedback from it. People loved it. They love that, we're actually giving them some advice for what to do in the gym. So I want to talk about why I picked that first, and then why we're going to do the biceps tonight. And I really should say the elbow flexors, which is the front of the arm. This is going to be your next project for the next 3 weeks. So let's talk about the relationship they have. So the back of the shoulder takes a beating in pitching. They've done tons of research on this. The external rotators of the back of the shoulder actually show atrophy, meaning some of the tissue isn't even feeling like it's alive. The tissue actually is shrinking at the end of the season because of how much it's used. And in fact, I've mentioned this, my first pitch strike program is designed around making sure that doesn't happen to the pitchers who use the program. But they actually looked at major leaguers. There was tons of atrophy in the rear of the shoulder because it acts kind of like brakes. And you know how when you hit your brakes a lot, you have to change your tires. So the way I look at this is we're changing tires. We got some new front tires last week, or maybe rear tires, we'll call it. And today we're going to change the other set of tires. So here's how the two muscles work together. And it's why these two are so important to get rebuilt and restored before you start your throwing program, even to prioritize it while you're training in the off season, because they need it. So the rear of the shoulder, of course, is the decelerator of the elbow, and it also is it's decelerating the entire arm. It takes a beating. It brings the arm into external rotation. It slows down the arm during acceleration. The other important thing is when these muscles break down, you end up with pretty bad posture. You don't want any pitcher doing anything in the gym. I don't care what he's doing. I don't care what exercise or what body part. His posture has to be perfect. So now we killed two birds with one stone. We get the pitcher standing up straight again. We get the tissue rebuilt. We get them feeling better because the second their rear shoulder comes back in, they feel awesome. So now we've got that going. Well, the rear delt and the bicep, and again, I should say elbow flexors, and I'll explain that in a minute. The front of the arm, they work together because as the deceleration is transferred from the shoulder into the arm, the biceps or the flexors take over for the role of doing that. So oftentimes, guys and coaches, if you've had pitchers that complain of sore biceps, and if you remember from all the other podcasts, we never want a sore bicep because one of the heads inserts into the labrum of the shoulder. So biceps pulling off the labrum can cause these tears in the labrum. So we want biceps to be very healthy during the season. If you right now have pitchers that were complaining of soreness last year, you're going to love this next series. But what I want you to do is have them roll up their sleeves and see if the bicep of their dominant arm looks smaller than the bicep of their left arm. That is the telltale sign that that pitcher's tire not only has no treads on it, but it's about to blow out. Because what happens from deceleration, it's an injury to the fibers in a different kind of way than when we get other types of injuries, or damage, I should say. And it actually, the healing time, etc. So you have to focus on rebuilding this muscle, and this muscle has to regain its strength, because from use and use and use and not actually rebuilding it, it actually gets weaker. And the weaker it gets, the worse problems get. And then you have forearm problems, and the next thing you're on the table. So this is one of the most important injury preventive sort of programs, so that you can restore the bicep to its prior conditioning. And if you start this now for the next 3 weeks, in 3 weeks or so, you're going to be probably getting close to starting a throwing program. Then you've got an arm that has been restored and recovered. But this needs to be a strong muscle. So that's the first thing. Now, the thing I want to talk about is, let's talk about this. So the reason why you heard me tripping up on biceps and flexors is the research that's done in biomechanics and kinesiology is usually done, and they say, oh, the biceps are the decelerators. Well, I'm not convinced that the biceps, the exact muscle, is the decelerator, because of some reasons which you'll learn in a second. So let's talk about the anatomy first, so this makes sense. The muscle above the elbow that you all know about that sticks out is the biceps, and it has two heads, the short head and the long head. Underneath that muscle is another flexor called a brachialis. Now, you don't have to remember these names, but know that there's something under it that actually pushes those small biceps up. That is why bodybuilders know about this muscle. They may not know the name of it, but they know that there's certain exercises they have to do to work that muscle. And that muscle, by the way, is considered the workhorse of the upper arm. It's the strongest. It's extremely powerful. The other muscle that is working as the elbow flexes, and flexes is what you do when you bring your hand up towards the top of your shoulder. That is flexion. The other muscle is called the brachioradialis. That's on the outside of the arm. And it's right across from that medial elbow where we get all the injuries to the UCL. When we look at EMG studies for pitching, the brachioradialis is considered the main player, or the most active elbow flexor in the fastball. Now, you're like, well, why would it be so effective in a fastball? Well, it's probably stabilizing the elbow during the fastball. So muscles have actions that they do. In other words, they bend the arm like the flexors do. They also have stabilizing qualities to them. And I think that in the arm, this is a very important thing, because UCL damage comes from forces that occur on the inside of the elbow, where the forces are so great that it's taking a little bit of beating trying to resist some things. And when you're looking for something to resist, you're looking for stabilization. So we've got all these important things going on. And by the way, one of the forearm muscles that actually turns the hand, it actually is an elbow flexor as well. It's called the pronator teres. So when you're dealing with trying to keep the elbow with the front muscle strong, you have to understand some concepts. So can go to YouTube to see what we're going to be talking about here. One of the things, so Joe, I want you to take a look at the picture called grip positions.
Okay.
And there we've got one of my favorite pitchers, Chris. Again, we've seen him before. So he's showing 3 different grip positions, and this is really important for people to understand. And people who train know it. They may not know why they do it. So notice in the first picture on the left, his palm is down. That's called pronation, and that's a pronated grip. And it's, by the way, the position the wrist is in when you release the fastball. It's a pronated grip. I want you to go to the photos on the right, and at the top picture, you'll see the palm is up. And that's called a supinated grip. Or if we want to pronounce it supinated, S-U-P, up, sup, then you'll remember that that is what's called supination or supination. And in the bottom picture on the right, you see a hammer grip. Well, people are really smart in the gym. We call it a hammer grip because guess what? That's how you hold a hammer, right? So a hammer grip is what we call it. Scientists probably call it a neutral grip. Okay, so we've got 3 different grips there. Why is it that we would need those 3 grips when we're training the biceps? Because I just got done mentioning 4 different muscles or groups. And some of them are shut down in certain grip positions. Some of them work more with a certain grip position. So if I want to pick 3 exercises that I think are going to get the job done, and I want them to be thorough, I don't want to pick 3, dumbbell curls, barbell curls, this and that. I have to be, and it's my job as an analytical kinesiologist to know what grips are going to affect what muscles and what muscles are going to affect the joint and how do they relate to what happens in pitching. So all you have to do is trust me on this. So these 3 grips are so important, and it is why you're going to be doing 3 exercises. Each of those have one of these grips. So now let's take a look at the hammer curl.
Okay.
So for everyone watching, this is a dumbbell exercise, and I want you to notice so on the right arm, that's the beginning of the movement, and on the left arm, that's the top of the movement. So Eric's in the middle of this exercise. He's doing what I call an alternating fashion. How you do them isn't as important as that you do them. So there's always 3 ways to do things, or 2 ways to do dumbbell exercises. You can alternate, bringing one up, one down, bringing the other one up and bringing it down. You can do 2 at a time. And then I should say there's a 3rd way to do it, which is you just have one dumbbell in one arm and you do it straight and then you put it on the other arm. I think what would be a great idea for this season right now is to do 2 at a time. If that is something uncomfortable for a pitcher, he can go ahead and pick alternating arms or just a single arm. But in either case, the arm starts straight and it ends up where you see Eric has it finishing, and then he's bringing it down. So that is called a hammer curl. That muscle is working the muscle that's on the outside. So if you look at his straight arm and you look to the outside of the elbow, that muscle runs from above the crease to right below the crease. And it is what they call the main muscle. It shows the most activity in the fastball than any other arm muscle. So I'm thinking it's because it's working hard to stabilize the inside of the elbow where we know it's taking a beating on the fastball. So this is your hammer curl. Let's open up now. And actually, it's a video, and I chose the video because I wanted to point out some good things. So we've got Chris here again, and we've got a video playing. And on this video, what you're seeing is a preacher dumbbell curl. Now, just for everyone who knows, and there's going to be the next video, which is from the side. Probably it's going to be playing at the same time because I've got a great video editor. You're going to see that that bench has sort of a curve to it, and it's got the name preacher curl because of preacher benches in churches. So what this does is it's got the bench right under the arm. So it's got the upper end of the biceps really relaxed so you can get most of the emphasis at the lower end. And remember I said one of the heads of the biceps inserts into the shoulder. So this is kind of a really good safe exercise for pitchers. What I want you to notice with this technique, he's got the supinated grip, which means that both his bicep heads are working. And in the last exercise, by the way, only the outside bicep head was working, along with that other muscle I mentioned, the brachioradialis. So the inside head was not activated on that. So on this, you've got the 2 biceps. You're also getting that big muscle underneath, the brachialis. So this is a great exercise for pitchers. Now, what I want you to notice in this technique is that he's going very slow on the way down. And this is a good way to train any of the elbow flexors because you're getting deceleration emphasis on this, And that is what the bicep does. In addition to stabilizing the arm, it decelerates the arm. So this is a great way to get the good technique. Now we're going to take a look at it from the other angle. So you're going to be able to see that curved bench. And hey guys, for you guys that are in high schools where you don't have these fancy benches, take an incline bench, get it to the right height, and use an incline bench. He's doing these single arm because these biceps take such a beating in pitching. I want the pitcher to feel the separation and the difference between his two arms. Most of the time they'll say, I can't believe it. My left arm's better than my right one. That's what you don't want to have. You don't want to have a dominant arm that it should be stronger and it's weaker because of what he does with it. So notice again the timing of this exercise. So this is your preacher dumbbell curl. And on the last exercise we're going to look at the reverse curl. And in the start photo, you're seeing that he's using a bar that has an unusual shape. So first of all, look at the bar carefully, and you'll be able to see it also in the next photo. It has it's called an easy curl bar because it has sort of waves. It's like a spread out W. It's sometimes called a W bar. And he's got the grip positioned like he has. It's shoulder width, and there are angles. So he's on an angle that is right for that. And also notice that his grip is pronated. When you have a pronated grip and the elbow is bending, the biceps that we're working on the previous exercise, they are not recruited. They can't get, it's biomechanical, but they can't get the force. So the brachialis underneath the biceps is being recruited here, which, by the way, has been working on both of the other exercises. And it's not going to get tired. It's such a workhorse. So now you're kicking it in a little more. The other thing about this, notice that because his hand's pronated, you're seeing his forearm. Well, the pronator teres is on top there, and he's going to be getting some forearm work as well in the muscle that actually is pretty important in pitching because it rotates the forearm, and having your forearm rotate when you want it to and not rotate when you don't want it to is very important in creating your pitch types. So if we look at the photo that has the finish, then you can actually really see the shape of that bar. And you also notice that he's coming to the top, but he's not up so high that he's resting. So that's the beginning and the start of that muscle group. So now you've got 3 great exercises. So you're going to priority train them this week. You're going to start with the hammer curl. You're going to go to the preacher curl next, and you're going to go to the reverse curl. And this 3 exercises are the magic 3 for the next 3 weeks. And this will enhance what you're doing with the rear deltoids. And now you're going to have that marriage of the 2 decelerating components of the arm. And the other thing is you got the back tires fixed last week, and now you're going to get the front tires done this week. And now we've got something that's going to be awesome for the pitchers to start their throwing program with.
Wow. There's some good stuff here, Angel.
Yeah, and if you just want big guns, guys, any of you coaches out there, Curls for Girls, this is the program for you as well.
It's good for the beach, right?
Exactly.
Good for the beach bod. But actually, Angel, toward that end, could you overdo your bicep training? Could you overdo one particular exercise? Should you make sure you do all 3 equally? Could you overbuild, I guess, the bicep muscle to the point where it could be detrimental?
Well, if what you're asking is so first of all, way back in the day, especially when I was on the scene introducing strength training for pitchers, which was in the 90s and nobody heard of it, there was this, if your bicep gets too big, then you lose your range of motion and then you're going to have trouble. Well,
exactly.
Okay. If you're going to do steroids, your bicep might get too big. But basically, our body's pretty good at knowing how big you can get something. And pitchers don't have that. You can't in 16 weeks become a bodybuilder. You have to do that all year long. And biceps is one of the muscles, and we'll be talking about this when the season starts. When you have to start to adjust workouts, you've got to adjust bicep training when you are pitching. So you're in a good time right now to build these muscles, because once you start with your interval pitching program, you have to start altering some of your workouts. So that's the time to do it. So when a muscle gets too big and starts altering something, this deal about range of motion loss, people who say this don't lift weights. If you are doing things to enhance your performance, where your body's working beyond what its structure is, all is up for grabs. I can't comment on that. And yes, things could happen like oversized muscles. And I think we know what I'm talking about, right? But when we're talking about a normal body and training correctly with the right posture and the right technique, if you noticed all those guys, they looked fantastic. You didn't see anybody slumping over, looking sloppy, jerking things up and down. And even the still shots came from live video. And so it's not like they were just standing there faking it. That was, done from the process of an exercise. So when you're doing things correctly, you don't lose range of motion. I've never stretched a muscle a day in my life, and I've lifted weights for 40 years. So it doesn't happen. But unfortunately, the world of weights, you can get out of control and do things incorrectly. So take home message is to ensure that things don't go wrong. Perfect technique, full range of motion, and doing things correctly. That's a great question that you had, Joe, because that may be something people wonder about. But I'm going to say this. Anybody who's saying, oh, no, we never have our guys train their biceps, they use their biceps. They use their shoulders. They use their legs. They've got to train everything. They're athletes. And this, again, is the sport that was the latest to come on the scene with admitting that lifting weights is good. And by the way, I know you watch the World Series and some of the playoffs, et cetera, where we really get to see great pitchers. Pitchers are training. It's no longer that they're the weakest guy on the team. And so I think that we want to continue that. And the best thing you can do for an arm to avoid injury is to have an arm that doesn't get fatigued. Fatigue is the number one reason why UCL injuries happen. The surgeons themselves are saying this. Well, how do you get a muscle that's not fatigued? It's not just pitch count. In fact, for you guys that want to throw your pitchers, keep them out there for as long as they can do a good job, which I'm a complete fan of, the best way to ensure that right now is to build their arms. Build their arms so they're strong, so they have more power, so they have what we call power endurance, meaning they can repeat their performance. That's how you offset fatigue. That's how you protect the UCL. And that's how you build and engineer a good pitcher.
All right. I have one more question.
Okay.
If you're a pitcher and you don't have access to an easy curl bar, all you have is a barbell, can you still do the reverse curl with that, or should you just use your dumbbells?
I love that question because I didn't mention this. The reverse curl on an easy curl bar, I call it an easy curl bar because if you remembered, in fact, you can look at the photo again, the hands are on an angle. That angle is actually the way your hand usually is hanging. If you notice, you don't stand there and your palm's completely straight behind you. Your hand's kind of on an angle. So when you grab an easy curl bar, it's very comfortable. That's why maybe it's called easy curl. It's comfortable on the wrist. One of the things that I noticed way back when I started training pitchers, and this happens for anybody who lifts weight, we all know this. If you lift weights, you know that when you hold a straight bar, especially with a pronated grip, it's going to feel weird. You can do it better with a supinated grip as you do in a barbell curl, but even that can be forcing a degree of supination that your hand doesn't have. So the answer to that question is you should do a reverse curl with the W bar or an easy curl bar. Now, here's an alternative. Most gyms have a cable system, and most gyms have attachments for their cables. There is a bar for the triceps. It's kind of shaped like a W. It's shorter. It looks just like the easy curl bar, but it's an attachment you put on the cable. You can actually do a reverse curl with the cable. You would attach it to the low pulley. In fact, my guys do it as an alternate movement. So that would be the third suggestion on that. That was such a great question, Joe, and an important one. Thanks for having my back on that because that's an important piece of information. You want to always protect the wrists of a pitcher. So, yeah, we want to keep it safe.
Well, and you just answered my last question, which was about the pulleys, the cable pulleys. I was going to ask if you could use those, and there you go. So
yeah, I have a feeling you're making notes on this and that we're going to see some amazing arms on you in a few months.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe I get my beach bod going and I'll start throwing 90 miles an hour again. Who knows? I
could see all the coaches sitting there right now, putting their hand, doing it, saying, oh, yeah, I'm getting a good feel in there. So awesome. Yeah. Hey, coaches need to be in shape too,
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah, we just can't sit by the wayside and give instructions. So anyway, I'm excited, and I am very excited about knowing that all these pitchers that have these great rear shoulders are now going to have great biceps. They're going to be feeling fantastic.
Yeah, bunch of Popeyes out there. So awesome. All right, so this was a really great episode, Angel. Thanks for sharing all that. This is it's good stuff for the off season.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you for being here and helping with that.
Of course, and as always, if you have any questions, you should email Angel at gymscience.com. If you haven't been to her site yet, you should absolutely check out her site. It's gymscience.com. There's all kinds of great stuff there that you can take a look at, both for free and some products for sale that will definitely help you. I highly recommend the Elbow Book. And that's all that there is for today. We'll see you again in about 3 weeks. And in the meantime, we wish you safe and effective performance on the pitching mound.